Okay. And for number 5, I kind of introed this in class. I set it up for you. When you have an empty 5-gallon water jug, that's 0 cups, weighs 0.75 pounds, and 3 cups weighs 2.25 pounds. Solve out to get your slope, which was 1/2 or 0.5. Plug into point slope and then rearrange. We should get 0.5x plus 0.75. Then they wanted you to predict how much a jug with 5 cups of water would weigh, and we plug that in for x. We should get 3.25 pounds.
For some reason, it's plus. That's why that wrong.
Yeah, whenever you're at point slope, you should have added it, which would be inverse. All right, now, the scatter plot, remember, everyone's trend line equation is going to be slightly different. I got mine to be y equals 2x plus 22. So some people I walked around, I saw like 8/3. It's close to 2. As long as your slope is somewhere near 2 and your y-intercept is somewhere near 22, something in the relative area of it. Okay? And again, as long as when I look at your graph, it makes sense. So today we're going to learn how to do, on the graphing calculator, the line of best fit, which is a program our calculator will run to actually calculate a line that would go directly through the data for us so that we no longer have guessing. And on the back, as I just mentioned, all of the answers were B. So for the first one, you should have gotten B by observing the y-intercept was definitely 23. So I eliminated choices A and D. And then based on the slope, the line would be increasing. So the slope must be positive, so that was B. For number 9, what you should have done was extended the graph. So first of all, I drew in my line of best fit. Okay, freeform. But I would use your popsicle sticks. Then they want me to predict what spot's weight will be after 18 months. So I need to add like an extra little check mark. Now make sure you realize they were counting by 2. So you would just be going to the next one. And then you would travel up to the line of best fit. And then you would travel over. And it should be between 30 and 35, which is 32. Okay. If you wanted to, you could have done more work. You could have written an equation for this line and then plugged in 18. That also would work. But we should have still got B. And then the last one, a lot of students will pick A by accident because they look at it and they're like, it's going down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. The slope is -1. But notice they were counting by 5s. So they really went down 5 and over 1, which would get me a slope of -5. So just be careful with your axes. Okay. All right. Today then, I'm already recording the lesson. Look at this little reminder. Today then we are going to use our graphing calculator. So we need our graphing calculators out. And we do have a quiz on Friday, which I just found out we have a 2-hour early release on Friday.
You just shorten the test a lot.
I might just cut off one question or something, but I think, how long are classes? So they're 30 minutes instead of 42. I'll look at it and assess. I might have to do some questions on it. You need a graphing calculator. Where's my phone? And then you give it back. Yeah, you need one. So let's re-give you one. Let me pause this. Someone please remind me before I forget. All right, so again, today we are going to use our calculator to do a linear regression. And then we will be making predictions with that linear regression. So on Friday, we did a trend line, which was a semi-accurate way to predict some data. But today we're going to find one more accurately, which is called the line of best fit. And a graphing calculator is used to compute that for us. There's also programs online, like if you Google linear regression calculator, it wouldn't be a graphing calculator, but it would calculate the linear regression for you. And this is again called the linear regression. We'll also do quadratic regressions and cubic regressions and quartic regressions this year, but in chapter 2 we just focus on our linear. All right, it's also going to give us a correlation coefficient, which is the letter R. That's going to tell us if it's a strong positive, a strong negative, a weak positive, a weak negative, or a no correlation without actually looking at the scatter plot. Now tomorrow probably I'll show you how you can also do a scatter plot on the graphing calculator, and you can actually see the graph of it. You draw the line of best fit. I don't want to overwhelm you today because some of you will get really stressed out with the graphing calculator. Some of you will love it and be so happy you're allowed to use one, but there's always a couple of students that get a little stressed out with the buttons. All right, so the correlation coefficient is going to range from -1 to +1, and that'll tell you how closely the equation models the data. So the closer or the nearer that it is to one of those ends of the spectrum, the more closely the data clusters around the line. Okay, so that will be indicating that's a strong correlation. So the closer that R lies to -1, so we're saying like -0.98, -0.99, that would say it's a strong negative correlation. If the number is near 1, +1, that's a strong positive correlation. And if R is near 0, then there is said to be no correlation. Most of our numbers are going to come out to be either 0.97, 0.98. Okay, those are going to be all strong.
Would there be a number that be exactly -1 or 1?
It could, and that would be the precise line. So instead of having a scatter plot, it would be points that like the line went through all of the scatter plots. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it was actually just writing the equation of the line that goes through all of them. And that can happen. And I'm going to show you how the homework questions that you did last night with your CAB question and the jug question, how we could do those on the graphing calculator instead of doing all that work. But I don't show it until after. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the graphing calculator to find the line of best fit. So instead of creating a graph, plotting these, drawing the line of best fit, finding the slope, finding the y-intercept, we're going to use the graphing calculator to do all of that for us. Okay, the first thing that you have to do is you have to turn your diagnostics on. Okay, once you turn them on, they're always on. But Maddie, since you're borrowing a calculator from me today, when you go home, make sure you turn them on your own calculator. Is anyone else, and Regis, you're borrowing a calculator. So make sure you, when you go home, do your homework and you have your own. So to turn the diagnostics on the graphing calculator, you'll see that there's a catalog button. This is like the index of a book if you were to go to the back and look up like any word alphabetically and see what page it was on. If you press second 0, this actually gives you an alphabetized list of everything your calculator is capable of doing for you. Okay, we want to go down to the diagnostics. So you can either hit the arrow button down until you get to the diagnostic on, or if you want to skip, you can press the alpha and then the letter D, and it'll skip down to D. So I pressed alpha and then the letter D and it jumped down, but I still have to scroll a little bit. Just bear with me because my board's always like delayed slightly. It's very frustrating. All right, so we should be at diagnostic on. We have to hit enter 2 times. So hit enter once, it'll take you back to your home screen. Hit enter again and it will say done. Once those are on, they're on forever. But I always like to show how to do it because if you have a science teacher who makes you like clear out your calculator, which you'll have, some of you will have one, clear out the memory. If you clear out the memory, you'll have to redo this. Okay, but again, it's just under your catalog settings. All right, now when we're doing the linear regression, there's steps typed out here, but I like to write them out myself. Okay, step 1 is to press your stat button. And I'm going to go ahead and actually have both of these screens open at the same time. see that there's an edit option, and that's what you're going to do. We're going to press the edit, hit enter. So over here on our notes, let's just write edit. And then you'll see L1 and L2. Those are like your X and your Y. What you're going to do then is you're going to input your data. Okay. Now, before you start typing in 1993, in the directions, it does tell us to let 93 correspond to 1993. So instead of putting these numbers in, I'm actually going to put in 93, 94, and so on. And they tell you 2000 will represent 100. Okay, so this is what I'm going to put in my L1, these numbers. This is what I'm going to put in my L2. Before we start, is anyone missing L1 or L2?
Wait, where's stat?
Right here.
Okay, this is stat. Okay.
And the very first option is edit, so hit enter, and then you should be here. Is anyone missing an L1 or an L2? Okay, if you end up deleting it, everyone, let's just do it together. Go up to L2 and hit the delete button. So arrow up, hit delete. If L1 or L2 ever gets deleted, you won't be able to run the program. Okay, so if you by accident do it, you can reset it. Press the stat button again, and you'll see setup editor is option 5. So you can either scroll down and hit enter, or you can just press the number 5. Again, it'll take me back to my home screen, hit enter. It'll say done. Go back to stat and edit, and L2 will magically reappear. But you have to have L1 and L2. If you somehow delete it by accident, you can come ask me. But it won't work if you do L3 and 4. Okay. Now, if you want to clear out the values, you don't hit delete, you hit the clear button. So if you arrow up so that the L1 is like highlighted, hit clear and enter, and it will clear out the values. You just don't want to delete the column. Okay. Some of you may not have anything in them. Some of you may if you're using one of mine. Go to the other one and hit clear and enter. Did you hit enter?
Yeah.
Clear and enter. Are you highlighting the top? Like scroll all the way up so that the highlighted box is over L2. You don't want to just be under the single number because it'll just clear that one box instead of all of them. All right, now input your data. So in L1, I'm going to type in 93, 94, and take your time, because if you type one number in wrong, obviously it's going to give you a wrong equation. So take your time, and then put in your expenditures, which were in the billions. And always double check that you do have, an equal number of X values and Y values, because if you're one off, it'll tell you error. All right, now the second thing we're going to do is after we input our data, we're going to press the stat button again. You might want to write this down in your notes. We're going to press the stat button. We're going to arrow over to the calculate menu, which is at the very top, and I'll show it in a second. And then we're going to choose option 4, which is a linear regression. Okay, so you want to make sure you write that down in your notes. So I'll wait till everyone's done and then I'll show. Okay, press the stat button, arrow over to calculate. You'll see lots of options. Again, we will do more of these later in the year, but the only one we're focusing on right now is number 4. So you can either scroll down to 4 and hit enter, or I like to just press the number 4. Again, it takes you back to the home screen. It doesn't run the program until you hit enter. And if you did it correctly, it should match the gray box that's on your note sheet. Is anyone not seeing that? So there's usually one. Anyone not getting this? Okay, you input it on here. You grab 100. Anyone Anyone else getting different numbers or not getting this to show up? I mean, make sure you have this written down. Okay. So stat, calculate, linear regression. So let's go ahead and decode what all of these things mean. Your calculator writes ax plus b. It is the same thing as mx plus b. I don't know why they use a, they just do. Okay, so this a value is your slope. This b value is your y-intercept. Okay, the r squared you're going to ignore. The r value is our correlation coefficient. Okay, so when they ask you to write the equation for the line of the linear regression, you're just going to take the a and the b value, round them, and plug them back into that formula. So it will be y equals, I think the homework says the nearest hundredths, so we'll do two decimal points. So it'd be 32.33x, make sure you have the x, and then minus 2,671.67. So basically just taking the a value, the b value, rounding them, and plugging them back into that equation, ax plus b. Okay, the correlation coefficient is I'm not going to round it to the nearest hundredth, I'm going to go thousandths for this one. But if you wanted to, it would actually round to 1.0 if you rounded it to the nearest. And this will represent, since it's close to positive 1, a strong positive correlation. Now your calculator has the ability to actually graph, if you do this stat plot, it can graph the scatter plot, it can also graph the line of best fit. I'm not going to show it today because some of you will get too overwhelmed, but I will show it tomorrow. You'll never have to do it, but if you take AP Stats, you will see stuff like that. All right, let's try another one. And then one of you guys do one on your own. So this one says, use a graphing calculator to find the line of best fit, find the correlation coefficient, and then we are also going to predict with this one. So we're going to use the equation to predict something about the future. All right, so we have crime rates and years. Now notice, this one does not say anywhere in the directions that this should be 95. Okay, so since they don't say that, this is L1 as is. You don't change it. You only change it when the directions tell you to. And this will be my L2. So again, go back to our stat, edit, and then input our values. So stat, edit. I want to clear out because there's way more data points that are in my table right now. So arrow up so that the L2 is like highlighted and hit clear, not delete, but clear. And hit enter and it will clear it out. Go over to L1, again all the way up to the top, clear, enter, clear it out. Input your data. I'm going to use my computer keypad. And then on your quiz, make sure that you just, like, before you even run the program, just double check that you typed everything in right. Because there's not really any work to show, so if you type in one number just like off by, like, you transpose the numbers or whatever, it's going to give you the wrong answer. Just so you can. Okay, so once you have your data put in, we go back to the stat button. Basically, you're pressing stat for all of the whole part. Stat, arrow over to calculate, and choose option 4, and hit enter. Take the numbers, round them, which they already rounded for us, and plug them in for A and B. So we'll have y equals negative 248.55x plus 501,190.07. If you got different numbers, go back to stat edit, and you may have typed in a number wrong. Never hit enter. You were looking at the last one. Did you type it wrong? Make sure you hit enter after you go back. Okay, so you just don't have your diagnostics on. Did you not see the R last time either? Okay, so when you get home and in your calculator, you're going to turn the diagnostics on. So second arrow up, and then we're going to have to arrow all the way down to D. Okay, so diagnostics on, hit enter once, hit enter again. And then whenever we go back to this, it's not the top. So the correlation coefficient we should be getting is negative 0.99 or negative 0.985. Okay? Make sure you're looking at the R, not the R squared, which would represent a strong negative. Okay? Okay, yours is going to ask you a couple more questions. So it just says L1, L2. You just have to go down to calculate and hit enter. And then, yeah, yours is newer, so it'll just give you, it gives you options in case you want to do list 3 and 4. But you just literally have to hit enter or scroll down. Anyone else having trouble? All right, now the last part they want us to do is they want us to predict the number of crimes in the year 2012. So I want you, anytime you see in the directions when it says expand the window, ignore it. Okay, I used to make you graph this and expand the window and find it. I'm not going to make you do that this year. I'm going to show you eventually how to do it, but I won't make you. All you have to do is take 2012, plug it in for x. Okay, so we'll have negative 248.55 times 2012 plus and you just type that in your calculator. You do get a calculator on your quiz on Friday. And we should get 1,107.47, which normally we would round because you can't have a decimal amount of crimes, but they did give us a decimal, so just leave it as is. If done correctly, you should be getting y equals 0.33x minus 25.35. Your correlation coefficient was 0.98 or 0.975, which will represent a strong positive. And then be careful when you're predicting. What would I plug in for x? Not 12, close. Regis? 112. Okay, the year 2000 would represent 100, so 2012 would be 112 is going in for x. And we should get 11.61, and that was $1 billion. And the closure just says, what is the difference between a trend line and a line of best fit? So what is the difference between a trend line and a line of best fit? Ryan? Good. A trend line is an estimate. It's one that you're drawing in with your little popsicle stick. A line of best fit is accurate. It's using an algorithm to actually calculate the distance between all of the points and calculate the most precise line that would go through it. Okay.